In this video, we're going to walk you through how to use stored procedures as you start to build reports. So the first step of that starts at the actual database registration. So I'm logged into admin. I'm going to go to app databases, and I have a SQL server that has a set of stored procedures. And we're going to use that for the purpose of this video. It's this social media data. Very first thing we want to do is we want to make sure that we've allowed advanced report stored procedures. So you'll see here at the bottom of the registration screen a checkbox. It's turned off by default because just because you have stored procedures on that server does not mean you want your end users to use those to build reports. So you explicitly have to allow that if you want those stored procedures available. Once you do that, you do have to put the password in. Again, we don't retrieve or ever bring passwords out of the database. Test connection and click the save button. So that allows us now to make use of these stored procedures. The next step in the process is you do want to have the advanced report feature activated. Depending on when you installed the product, this might be there by default for you. If you're been with us for a while, you'll need to go in and explicitly register that. There's other videos on how to do that, so I won't go into detail on that yet. But you do want to make sure that you have advanced reports available. And then once you have that available under permissions, that's going to be a permission set that you would give a user if they can view data or run data under that advanced report. So you'll notice that I have both my social media data, which was where I have my stored procedures, and I also have the advanced reports. I want to make sure that the user has builder permission in both of those if I want them to build reports from stored procedures. If they're only going to view reports from stored procedures, then they can have the agent role. But they do need permission on the underlying data source where the stored procedures are located, and they need permission in order to view or build advanced reports. So now that that's configured, now I'm in as a super admin, so I don't need to have any specific permissions applied, but for individual users, you'll need to do that. You can go into your builder and you'll see now that you have advanced reports. We're going to pick advanced reports. You wouldn't pick the data source that you registered where your stored procedures are located. In fact, you'll notice that we haven't even configured a Yerby app for that. It's not even in our list here. Social media, actually it's in our list, but you'll notice there's no report types. There's nothing that a user can do in there because we never went into the architect and set up that like a traditional app. What we're going to do is go under advanced reports and you'll see stored procedure as an option. We're going to come back and use virtual app in a second. We're going to start with stored procedure, and any data source that has stored procedures allowed that I have permission to will now show up as a folder here. So this will be a list of your data sources, one or more. In this case, I only have the one. And when I expand that, that's going to be an actual list of the stored procedures on that particular data source. And now as I expand that, I can get to adding in the fields that might be required from a parameter perspective and things like that. Now, this particular stored procedure doesn't accept any parameters, so it's going to be pretty simple. But you just add that in just like you would add in a normal report field. And you'll see dynamically that's going to go out there and run that stored procedure, bring back all the data set from that stored procedure, and you'll see that it adds in these column cards under your field list, but they're special. They don't have the ability to move them up and down or add options like a normal report tree card that you have in the builder. In a stored procedure, we're just going to bring that back at the data set and make it available. So now what I can do is save this, and I'll just call this social media data as a report name, and I'll give it a permission set, and I'll save it in my private library for this video. And now, just like any other report within Yerby, I can run this. It's going to dynamically call that stored procedure. If I had added any criteria for parameters, it would include that as it runs. But if I would go into my library and run this, let's sort by created. There's our report. If I click that, that's going to dynamically run that stored procedure. And I can use this report and I can schedule it and I can embed it and I can put it in my dashboard just like I could any other report. But what you notice is I could not modify or edit anything. If I do want to use this as the source data to then start to build a visualization or a chart, that's where I'm going to go back into my builder and use that advanced report virtual app. So this is a feature that's been in Yearby since the beginning. There's other videos that will describe more about advanced reports, but essentially if I go into advanced reports, you'll see the virtual app. This allows me to use any individual report as a data source for new reports. I'm going to pick virtual app, and I'm going to select that actual stored procedure as my data source. And what that's going to do is going to dynamically run that stored procedure. It's going to get all those columns and all those data types. And it's going to generate me a dynamic report tree that I can now start to go in and build a report. So for example, if I bring in just the date and maybe my clicks, if I want to add criteria, you'll see now I'm in the normal flow of building a report as you would if it was directly from a data source. So maybe I want to say, bring me back last year's data, and I'm going to add a formula on my click count here to maybe sum it up in this case. But I can start to add in hidden fields that I might want to be parameters on the dashboard side. I can start to make fields non-visible and add criteria, and I can start to create visualizations and turn it into maps and do things just like I could with any other report. Let's make this a large number KPI, and we'll get a preview of that. Now you'll see that I'm using the underlying stored procedure as my data source. It's going to run dynamically every time I run this report, but I'm now turning that into more of a traditional Yearby style report. Really powerful, especially if you're migrating away from a tool where you heavily use stored procedures, or you have particularly complex reports where using a stored procedure and being able to pass parameters directly into that stored procedure can make the entire report processing faster and easier to process. So if you do have any questions about this feature, just reach out to us at support@yearby.com and we will be happy to help.